Alright, so we're back again, and today we're doing a different kind of video. Normally we focus on the gameplays, but today we're going to do a bit of an insight into the upcoming set. This is something that I haven't done before, and something that I want to have a go at, and I would really appreciate your guys' feedback behind this. Now, if you guys haven't seen the shorts, Vegito is probably, in my opinion, the best leader coming out of this set. I probably would argue that Janemba is maybe the most hype, especially if you're a Masters player and you're getting those Soul Striker vibes. And I think there's a lot of different ways that Janemba can be built, but I think in terms of like shaking up the meta, I think Vegito is probably the best deck for that. And I want to run through what I think my day one list would be if I was to pick this up the day that it releases. So you'll see that I have a 60 card deck. 60 cards I think is the number that you have to play in this. You can definitely cut this down. There is definitely spots in this deck that you could cut if you wanted to go down to like 55 cards. I probably do not recommend running 50 cards because if you're not chaining Vegitos, especially like this list only has 2 Vegitos and you deck out, you just lose. And when you think about it, if you're running 50 cards, by the time you take your 8 life and you draw your hand, that's over half of your deck in the drop by the time you awaken. So you really have to be mindful. And I think you just need to run the mainly 4s of things, because if you do mill them and you need them back, you'll see there is a lot of mixed ratios here. And a lot of these cards we can either play from the drop or grab back from the drop. So we'll go through what I think is going to be my best list for me personally. You guys might think different. You also see that I've got a side deck sitting there, and the side deck is other options that you could run over alternatives, or alternatives to what I have. So if you don't know what the leader does, we'll quickly run over it. When attacking, you draw 1 card, and when you're at 4 or less life, you don't draw, you don't untap an energy. Wow, that was so hard to get out. And you place the top 10 cards of your deck in the drop. That fulfills your permanent of 20 cards in the drop, which a lot of your cards are actually getting effects off 20 cards in the drop, which is, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of the whole, 20 cards in your drop, but I think I prefer 20 cards in drop rather than 7 or less in hand, but I think that might just be a skill issue. But yes, when you're awakened, when attacking, you draw 1 card, but the big thing is when you have 20 or more cards in your drop, it gains 20,000 power. Now, you get to swing 40,000 every single turn, and you can do the 20 or more in drop by turn 3 if you're playing this leader and awaken. So you pretty much will never swing 20k. But if you're thinking how are we going to get to that? Well, I'm going to quickly run you through the first 3 turns to get you to that 20 in the drop ASAP. So turn 1, and I think this is probably the most ideal turn. There is other options that we can go over, but I think Pan for me is the best one, mainly because it is 1 a 10k, 2 it gets you filter, and 3 it can be picked up off Pilaf if you ever need it. So drawing 2 cards and you discard 2 cards. So you straight away get 2 cards in your drop on turn 1. And now the reason I think that Pan is probably, for me, the best option is because you get to draw 2 cards and you get to filter your hand. So if you wake up with 2 dead cards that you just don't need till later on, you can discard them. Whereas if you play something that we've got here, like the Hercule, which is the other option, it automatically just mills you 2. So if you have 2 cards on the top of your deck, they could be super combos. If your first 2 mills are super combos, you could probably nearly kiss the game goodbye. I have played a couple of test games with this, and in one, I did mill 2 super combos, and it really did hurt me late game. So this deck, what you mill can sort of determine the outcome of your game, especially if you hit super combos. So that's why I think Pan is a really good option for this, because you get to choose what cards go into your discard pile. The added thing of Hercule is if you have 10 or more cards in your drop, draw 1. So later on in the game, yes, it is good because you do have that and you get to draw a card. Versus a lot of the time in this deck, you do find that you are playing over 7 or more in hand. So Pilaf is a bit harder to get off. But you can just go to Hercule to draw a card, and if you want to, you can pick it up with Pilaf. So Vegito is the other option that you can use if you wanted to change this. I still think you need that 6 to 8. It's kind of like your cantrip count. You kind of need 6 to 8 1-drop millers to help you facilitate that early game. Vegito is another option that you could run instead of the Pan or instead of the Hercule. I think the Hercule is better in this sense because it can be picked up off Pilaf, so it has a multi-function. But the downside to Hercule versus Vegito is that it is a 10k combo Vegito, whereas Hercule is a 5k combo. I really don't think you can go wrong with either of these options. The other one that there is is this old Kai, which is the same thing as the Hercule, but if you have 10 or more, you choose one of your same battle cards in your leader or battle area, and it gains 5k for the turn. Now, like, you can't play this on your opponent's turn to give yourself a bean, and I think blue has a lot of, especially like with the Pilaf loop, has a good way to just keep giving yourself 10k for the turn. For the battle. So I don't really know. I think this might only really be good synergy with the dual attacking cards, like the 5-drop SCR and the 6-drop SCR. Outside of that, I don't really think, because it is locked to Saiyan. Sure, we're pretty much playing, I think, all exclusively Saiyan, so you're pretty much always getting the 5k buff. But I just think that you could be better served getting Filter with Pan or just drawing a card with Hercule. That's my personal opinion. So now we go into turn 2, and your turn 2 is ideally you want to be Self-Awakening. I think blue's gone back to the Self-Awakening thing, especially because the 20 or more in drop is a thing, and you kind of want to get that quickly as possible to get yourself awakened so you can start swinging 40k, which is just a ridiculous number. So the easiest way to do that is either this Goku or the Vegeta. So the Goku, you add 1 card from life to your hand. Remember, this says add 1. It doesn't say up to 1. So this is non-negotiable. As soon as you play this card, you do take a life. So quite like a Nezzy in yellow, or there is a Android 18 that come out in the Diamond Starter. They are not optional. As soon as you play this card, you take a life. Then you mill 3. So it's really good turn 2, but you have to be careful with these cards because this Goku is only get backable from the Vegito because it's a 2 cost, not a 3 cost, so you can't get it back from the Vegeta as well. So I feel like maybe you could flex this if you wanted to run maybe Kabitos instead, if you didn't want to go for the Self-Awakening or the Kais. But I think this is also an option for the early game. And then after that, it's just 10k combo. So it does double down as a 20k attacker. I don't think you really go wrong with this card as it is a good turn 2 option. But I mean, like, if you really wanted to, you could play like a Peeler. You could also play like 2 Pans if you wanted to instead of that, and then you've trashed 4. You could play a Pan and a Hercule and pretty much trash 4 instead of 3. But this Vegeta, I really do like this Vegeta. And this card, you don't have to attack straight away because it gives your opponent something to swing into, so you do kind of have to protect it. So you can play this down turn 2 if you want, and swing with it if you want to defend it. Or you can leave it for turn 3. I found that a good thing to do is leave this till turn 3. As long as your opponent can't answer it, you can swing this and then take a life with something the next turn, and you can still get your Awaken. Because you want your opponent to be swinging at you, so you're taking your own life, rather than having to defend your targets and doing it that way. So this card also does mill 3, quite like the Oob, and I prefer this option to the Oob. Yes, the downside to this is that it is 5k combo, not 10k, but I think this card is really good because as long as you keep attacking with it, you can keep milling. So even if you are struggling to see like your self-mill pieces, whether it be the Goku, the Pan, the Hercule, or even the 3-cost Goku, if you are struggling to mills, as long as you can keep this thing alive, you can keep milling with it. So that's not the end of the world if you use this card. So we will skip over to our Self-Awaken, get the mill going, and this Son Goku SR, which is, I think, a really good card. So on play, you add up to 1. So this one you can choose whether you want to take a life or not, which, unlike the other Goku, you don't have the option. So you place top 5 cards of your deck in the owner's drop. So if you map out your turns, turn 1, you can do 2 here, 2 with your 1-drops, 3 with your 2-drops, and then 5 with your 3-drop, which gets you to 10, and your leader mills you 10. So that gets you to the 20 in the drop, and you can Awaken turn 3, swing a 40k, as well as a 25k. So that is really strong. Depends where your opponent's at, whether like it feels really good to just be able to Awaken and swing the 40k. Maybe there is also a case that you can play that little bit slower and wait till your opponent's Awaken before you start swinging the 40ks at them. So you get essentially the most value. You get more filter through your hand, more cards in hand, stuff like that. You know, play the more generic blue way if you want to. So you can play that way if you wish. But the other effect of this card is if you have 20 or more cards in your drop, the next time you activate an extra card with a cost of 3 from your hand, you don't have to pay its cost. So like literally this doubles down as a few cards. So like You can use a Galactic Donut for free to draw some cards. You can use a Sickle to get rid of 2 cards. Or you can use this See card to not only give your battle card, your Son Goku, with a cost of 3, double strike, you can also bottom deck one of your opponent's battle cards. Now, the thing that you have to also remember with this card is even if you don't have the Goku, this card will choose any of your opponent's battle cards regardless of whether you have the Goku on the field or not. So if you just need to remove a body, you can just use this for 3 to bottom deck something. So now we're back to, we're going along. So we're playing this Vegeta, and this card, on play, you add a 3 or less from your drop to the hand. Now, we have actually put a few more 3 drops in this deck, but mainly they are the Goku, because a lot of the time you like play down the Vegeta late game to grab back the Goku or the CU for your like game finishing combo. But if you need to at any point, you can play down the Vegeta to pick up a Donut or a Sickle, or you can just grab some combo, which we've got like 2 10k Gokus. This is like optional as well. Like if you want to play this kind of package, you can use this 3-drop Goku, or if you want to change things up, you can run like a full Potara package, as we have the Shin Searcher, which searches for a Potara, and you can add this Vegito. I did test with this Vegito, and for this deck, it just didn't feel right, because you just want to be milling for 3 energy, not sticking this on the board. So I just felt that this wasn't the way to go. But if you want to run this Shin and search out things like your 4-drop and your 5 and your 6-drop, or your Vegito targets, or even if you want the candy to get back some pieces, you can use this Shin. And then if you want to make your deck that bit more consistent, you can run the Vegito. Like you could ideally cut like the Gotenks for the Vegito straight away, and then just find some room for the Shins. But that is another option that you could go with the deck, because that does give you a lot of targets, so you pretty much should never whiff. So that is the other option that you can go to if you don't want to run like the vanilla 3-drop Goku for just like that, getting that 10k combo back. The other cool thing about this Vegeta, you switch it to rest mode. If you have 20 more cards in your drop, your Son Goku with a cost of 3 gets 30,000 for the battle. So pretty much for 5 energy, for your game-winning kill, you can play this to grab back one of the 2 Goku or CU pieces, play them out, swing with the Goku, use the CU for free to bottom deck anything, and mind you, this is activate main, not battle, so you need to do this before you swing. And bottom deck anything, swing with this, rest your Vegeta to give your Goku 30k, so he's currently at 55,000, plus whatever you've got in hand, and like I've said a few times already, you don't normally, I found Pilaf hard to get off a few times, but Pilaf is too good not to run. Found it hard to get Pilaf off a few times just because of the 7 in hand. And a lot of the time, once you've awakened, you're at like 10 to 12, and you're just trying to juggle around that. So there isn't always the time to play Pilaf, but generally, if you've got 10 to 12 cards in hand and you're going for game, you're going to have a lot of combo power. So this is pretty much your game ender, this Goku, in my opinion. Like, you can end with like the Vegito, but there's no like double strike or anything, because there's no need to run it when you've got this package here. So I'm also running 2 of the Vegito candies, and I think this card is good. I don't know if I want to play this at 4 or not, because if you mill these, they're gone. And if you just mill a 2 of in like one in your set of 10, then like it's just pointless playing the card. But I wanted to try and find room for it, because I do think that it is good if you do mill your Vegetas and your Gokus, and you can't really, if you need to get back Vegetas and or Gokus, you need this to get back your Vegetas. And if you can't get back Vegetas, you can't get back Gokus, or you can't get back your Seers. This obviously doesn't grab CU, but it can get you Goku and Vegeta. Sure, it bottom decks it, but I think it's a necessary evil to run this card just in case you mill and you can't get to your game-ending situation. I think this just allows you, maybe it might take you a turn longer to kill your opponent, but at least you can set up for your kill with this card. Because if you mill the cards, then, well, that's one of your win cons out the window. So I also am running the 4-cost Gotenks, and it's up to you whether you run this. There is also the Ultimate Battle promo that instead of bottom decking a 3 or less, you can actually draw a card instead. So it's really like on you which one you would prefer to run if you choose to run one. I think this is also a good turn 4 option. Like mainly the main turn 4 option you have is your Floodgate Vegito. But if you don't have the Vegito, or you want to pivot a bit and you don't want to use your Vegito straight away because your opponent hasn't established much of a board, or maybe for some other reason you don't want to use the Vegito then and there, you have got this Goten that, yes, it does mill 2, but that's all right. You will easily have the 10 or more in drop, so it will be a 35k attacker for 4 energy, and also bottom decks a 3 cost. So this is really good if you do play this down turn 4, going like first, because you're pretty much bottom decking whatever card they played out the turn before. So you can apply that pressure and get some board removal with this card, and I think like you can't really go wrong. It is, yes, it is a 0 combo, so maybe that might make you a bit not wanting to use this card, and I could get behind that, but I just think it's a decent option. So we have 2 4-cost Vegitos, and I think this one is definitely you must run this card, because if you mill your SCRs, well then they're gone. And this, like the same reason that I'm running the Candy Vegito to get back Vegetas and Gokus if I need to, you run this so you can play the Vegitos from your drop. So you really can't go wrong with this card, and yes, it is 6 energy, but it basically allows you to play something from your play your 6 drop from the drop if you mill it. So even if early game you get stuck with them in your hand, you can discard them with Pan, and then you can play them back out later. So that's why I also think it is good synergy to use the Pan. And like we've been saying, you'll definitely have 10 or more in your drop, and you can choose which one you want to play. So I mean, if you haven't milled this and you've milled this, well then you can play that one. The one thing I have found with this card, as I have said it multiple times now, the 7 or less in hand is a little bit of a problem. So in the few games that I have used this, I haven't been able to restand with it on turn 5 when I've played it, because I generally have had more than 7 cards in hand, and I'm not just going to combo cards out to go down to 7 just to get an extra swing. So do be mindful of this. Like, I feel like maybe the more I test this, the more this number will go lower. But maybe the more I test, the more I can get behind being that 7 or less in hand, which might ultimately help me like optimize this deck a bit better, and especially this card. But the main boy that you want to be using is this guy, and if you haven't played Masters and you don't know what Floodgates are, well, we're going to give you a quick little lesson on what Floodgates are. Basically, a Floodgate will just stop your opponent then and there from doing whatever the card is and whatever the Floodgate affects. So on play, you choose one of your battle card, choose up to one battle card with a cost of 4 or less in your opponent's battle area and return it to its own hand. In this game, I'm not a massive fan of returning things to hand. Yeah, it gets a body off the board, but a lot of the time, you want to like try and bottom deck as much as you can. That's why I think this Goten is really good, because the bottom deck's a 3, and then you've got Sickle, which will bottom deck 2 4s. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of bouncing to hand, but sometimes it is like it's better to bounce a Jiren to hand than have it get its leader, the effect off with its leader. But when attacking, if you have 20 or more cards in your drop, your opponent can't attack for battle cards with cost 3 or less during your opponent's next turn. And this card is not when it's played, it's when it's attacking. So if this card survives, every time you swing, it will floodgate your opponent. Your opponent just flat out cannot attack with 3s. You can play 3 or less, you just can't attack with 3 or less. And I think this card is really busted, and I think it's a really good reason to play this deck. I haven't tested it in other decks yet, but I think the 20 or more cards in your drop is a lot harder of a condition to reach when you're not playing self-milling cards like the Pan and the Hercule. I know this card is good, but I don't think it warrants running cards to mill a lot of your cards. Like, you could probably make a case for maybe running the CU and the Son Goku package to mill the 5 and get the double strike bottom deck. But I don't know. Has anyone of you tested this Vegito in other decks yet? I just feel like it might be that little bit harder, and by the time you get 20 or more in your drop to actually use its effect, might be a little bit too late, and it might just be pointless. Your opponent might be attacking with 4 or higher by that stage. So whether it's still valuable to other decks, I think it is a really good reason why you play this deck. Now moving on to our SCRs, and like I was just saying with this card, I think it's like I'm not completely sold on this yet, mainly because in my testing, I've found myself, every time I've needed to play this, I've always had more than 7 in hand, so it was kind of that bit hard. Like, losing out on a 30k swing can be like pretty pivotal on like turn 5. Could be like a lot more board pressure or face pressure, and I don't think you want to just try and sacrifice cards just to get that extra swing. So I don't know. maybe it's just me not playing, maybe playing the deck too fast and not controlling my hand, which has maybe made this card feel not as good in this deck. But this card definitely feels great in this deck because, like I said, you can also play along with the 5-drop. You can play it from your drop, so if you mill it, it's okay. If you want to discard it with pan, it's okay. But if you lose, normally you would lose if you run out of cards in your deck. But if this card is on the field, you don't lose. It gets 10,000 power instead. And it doubles down. It is also a 40k dual attacker. It returns anything to hand. So again, if you're playing a mirror and your opponent has milled themselves out and you play this, you can just bounce their SCR and you win via deck out because this card is no longer on the field if you've bounced your opponents. So it also does mill 5 of its own, so it is good if you're trying to deck yourself out to get that 10k to push for game, but you do need to be very mindful of how well you use this because late game, come turn 6, you've already got 20 in the drop, you've had 3 more turns of getting cards in your drop, you could be at like 30 cards in your drop by that stage. If you're running a 60 card deck, you've probably got about 10 to 15 cards left. Yeah, I probably can't do the maths right, but there's a good chance you're close to decking out if you're not playing 60 cards on turn 6 when you play this. There's also a good chance that you have like finished your opponent off, so that might not be a valid argument. But yeah, I think this deck is going to be really, really good, and I probably could contemplate maybe pushing this to 3. I don't know, 2 might be the right number. 2 of this might be the right number. I'm not too sure on ratios yet. Like I said, this is basically if I was just to grab this deck on day 1 of release, this is probably how I would build it. Obviously 4 super combos. I did actually drop a hot topic that I feel like we need some kind of different super combo. Like, these are defensive super combos at the moment, and I said the option, do we need to change things up and add like an offensive super combo? But I think that's a topic for another time. Super combos always stay the same. It's just personal preference. Galactic Donut, like we said before, draw cards, lock something down. Sickle, been around since set 1, just board removal. And of course the new Seer card. And that's pretty much how I would play this deck day 1. And I have showed you guys like a few other options. The other one is like always you've blue, you've always got your oh shit button in Zeno. So like if your opponent's board ever gets out of control, you can just Zeno. And the other, we did talk about the Patara package. And because we are running like 12 Earthlings, there is a case that maybe we run Videls, like, for the like, if you mill, for some reason, if you mill 4 Pilafs, they're gone. If you mill 4 Pilafs, he's gone. When, like, you've always got Videl, so you can always get the Pilafs back if you ever, like, mill them enough, but, again, it's a 0. You have got, obviously, your new Goku, that's a 0. You've got your new Vegito, that's a 0. And for example, I'm running the Gotenks, that's another 0, so really comes down to how many zeros you want to run, whether you use Videl or not. So that is my day 1 Vegito deck insight. Hope you guys did enjoy the video. Let me know in the comments what you would do differently, what you would run, and what deck are you most looking forward to coming out in set 5.